Hello, everyone. Welcome to CraftQuest on Call. I'm Ryan Ireland, and in this episode of the live stream, we got some questions queued up, and we have a featured topic where we're going to talk about a twig tag that you may or may not have used. So the questions we have that we'll talk about, including questions that you drop in the chat, we're going to talk about ask Andrew about testing plugins. Talk about project config files on a read-only file system, syncing content and files across environments, inconsistent version of project config files, and then why aren't template changes showing up when someone's developing locally with Nitro. So let's jump into it. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed colleague, the daring developer of SEO-matic, prolific publisher of articles that always seem to rank higher on Google than mine, and the ringleader of the Rochester Craft CMS web ring. Please welcome Andrew Welch. Hello, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and I'm in awe at how much time you must have spent in writing that. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. I had to read it, as everybody probably saw me glancing, because I couldn't remember it all. I'm not that good.
I understand. So speaking of memory, Ryan, speaking of memory, you know how I go for a hike every day?
I think I've even seen a live stream of your hike before. Yeah.
It's like one of my things. Like it's just I enjoy it as a break, and it's good, a little exercise. It's good for burning calories.
Your house and the property you're on backs up to some public trails, right, and stuff. So you go hiking a lot. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I can just walk right onto a number of hiking trails, so it's pretty cool. But the reason I say it relates to what you're talking about in memory, I was just reading. I heard this on the BBC News. That's like my only source of news. So I'm incredibly informed about world events. And I know absolutely nothing that's going on in my city, which is pretty funny because I don't know any local stuff. But there's a bone hormone that's released during exercise that helps with memory, helps with muscle, helps with a whole bunch of other stuff. So it makes sense now. Like when we were hunter-gatherers, we used to walk around, from place to place. Yeah. And the bone apparently releases something called osteocalcin. And that aids in cementing memories and stuff, because when you're walking around like hunting, water buffalo and stuff, you got to remember where they were and where the bad stuff was and all that kind of good stuff. So Ryan, I've got it. A new segment for CraftQuest. We're going to do CraftQuest calisthenics. Okay. So we're not going to bring it in yet, because I know people don't have
I'll wear my running suit. Okay.
Oh dear God. Is that the one that you've received complaints from about your harassing people in the neighborhood?
Shirtless, but I'll spare everyone on the live stream of that.
Oh, my goodness.
That's interesting, Andrew. I recently read a book called 7.5 Lessons on the Brain by I had mentioned her name earlier, Lisa Barrett Feldman, something like that. She's a neurologist. And it kind of goes with what you're saying. And the half lesson, there's 7 chapters, basically 7.5 chapters, but the half lesson is the first one. And she says that the brain isn't for thinking. And that's kind of like her setup for the rest of the book. And it's kind of the same thing. It's that the brain is really it really helps modulate and manage resources in your body, right? For survival. And I could see that by releasing those, whatever the hormone is, or the whatever the thing is that it releases when you're walking and stuff.
Osteocalcin.
Okay, osteocalcin. So when it releases it, I assume that's for survival reasons, which would make sense, which is that we're not really made to think. We're not made to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting loop, right? I mean, your mind. Well, a lot of the times we think of it as the mind is like the driver, right? Mm-hmm. But there are lots of things in your body that, when you do certain things, they release little rewards for your mind. Like it's this weird thing that it works in both ways. Like there's some weird random thing regarding mental health that's released by your stomach, or just all sorts of crazy stuff like that. Yep. So I don't know, just an interesting thing to think about when we're starting this out is, maybe get outside and do a little walking every now and then. Not now. Not now. Don't leave the show.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right, exercise is good for you. Walking, I will regularly. So I'm a regular runner, but I will regularly walk out of my office and go walk around the block if I'm struggling with something. Like
What are you
that I'm
running
working
from,
on.
Ryan?
What's that? What am I running
you
from?
running from?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Uncle Andrew.
Are you running from something, Ryan? Is everything okay?
So speaking of running, I'd like to talk about nothing related to running. Andrew, did you know today is, as we record this, it is April 29th. And on April 29th, 1985, I was freshly 10 years old. And that is the day, on that day, there was actually a space shuttle launch. April 29th, 1985. And it was actually the Challenger space shuttle. So it's the year before the tragic, launch of the Challenger. But so that was out of Kennedy Space Center, right, where they do all the launches out on the launch pad out there in Florida. And last week I was actually in Florida, and I got to experience a launch. Oh, I think this is not working. I got to experience the SpaceX launch. Did you catch that online at all?
I didn't.
All right. So last week they launched I had some video, but it's actually not coming up now. Oh,
Are you trying to get another strike on the channel or something, Ryan?
Hang on, here we go. Let me switch over.
Okay.
There it is. So this is out in my parents' neighborhood. They're not far from the Space Center. Anyway, so I got to see for the first time. They've seen like they've even seen shuttle launches and everything, but I got to see the thing that looks like the sun rising.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rocket of the SpaceX Falcon.
I think I just saw a UFO.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. So that's the SpaceX Falcon as it goes up into orbit and then eventually docked with the space station with 4 astronauts on board. So the cool thing that I think about, I think space stuff is, NASA, all that is already fascinating to me. And by the way, in person and the video you'll get from SpaceX is way better than this iPhone video, which just basically looks like a blob of bright light. But the what's so interesting to me about the stuff with SpaceX is that space travel to me finally looks like futuristic. Like, I don't know if you've noticed the spacesuits are all like, they look very like modern and futuristic now, not so like, I don't know, kind of ragtag. Like the NASA stuff always kind of felt like it was always stuck in like the 60s. And then the capsule, it's all touchscreen for the astronauts as they sit on their like sort of bench of seats. And anyway, I think it's a cool time to be into space travel, and not like as someone that I'm not obviously traveling in space, but someone that's fascinated by it. A lot of cool things going on. All right.
Would you pay for a trip to space, Ryan?
Yeah. I paid for an airplane ride to Florida, so I don't,
So how much would you pay to fly up in one of those ships that they take you up and you're, your wait list for, what is it, like a couple minutes or something, and then you come back down? What would you pay for?
Oh, in the airplane where they do what do they call those? They have a name.
And you get a view. You get a view of the Earth, and you can see the curvature, and
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. What would you pay?
I wouldn't actually. I want to go in like truly in orbit. Like I want to be in the SpaceX, in the capsule. I don't know what I would pay. Hopefully, if I was doing things right, they would pay me, right? Would that be the way to do it?
I guess if you you would kind of be like.
I'm too old and far behind to become an astronaut, unless they needed somebody to teach the space station astronauts how to use Git.
They should send us both up there and do experiments on the effect of weightlessness and hair growth, is what I think. Right?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to go, not you. Sorry, I was confused.
I'm trying to get myself in there now. Might as well.
Okay. All right. So it's a little bit of technological space talk. But we have some follow-up from another live stream, Andrew, that came in from a listener or a viewer. Let me just pull this up real quick. And this person says, in Andrew's boilerplate setup, why is he using Nginx?
Hold on. I'm sorry. We're still seeing your spaceship video, which is very cool, but that's what's on the screen. Oh, you are?
Oh, weird. Yep. Okay, hang on. Now.
There we go.
Now?
There we go.
All right.
Now we're good.
Sorry about that, everyone. So in Andrew's boilerplate setup, why is he using Nginx rather than Apache? Is this a preference? And if so, what is the reasoning? Purely a question and part of my learning curve. So it's not like this person is getting familiar with a new web stack for themselves. So Andrew, I guess I want to throw it over to you. I mean, Nginx is kind of just the default now. I don't think I use Apache anywhere in any of my environments, but do you want to speak to that?
I would say that it is a preference because it's not like there's anything necessarily wrong with Apache. Mm-hmm. I prefer Nginx because I like the configuration. It's more performant. And I don't know, it's the default setup for a lot of provisioning services. I realize that, the old school way to do everything is with Apache. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like, if you're serving stuff via Apache, you're not doing anything wrong. Everything's fine.
Right.
The real reason why I think it's a good time to look at other servers is that one of the reasons Apache is really popular is it has this .ht access thing, right? Which sprung out of shared hosting, really, because they would want to have the way that hosting companies made money is they wanted to pack as many people as they could into one server, and they would have one Apache configuration, but you would need different settings per site. So they came up with the idea of this .ht access file that you could then put rules in, and it would read them dynamically, and they could be different per site or whatever. In the age of VPSs, where you can just spin something up, or just even as a service, if you're using something like Served or Heroku, it's just not an issue anymore. You don't have to worry about that part of it. And I do think that Nginx is just a little simpler and a little cleaner, but ultimately, it's just a preference. It's just my, whatever. You can use whatever you want.
Okay. That sounds good. It seems like, at least in my orbit, is that Nginx is kind of the default way to go in all environments, but it doesn't really matter.
It depends on who you talk to, right? There's some people that be like, no, Caddy is the default thing, which is a web server that's written in Go, or you could say that, that using something like Express is the way to go if you're using a Node server, and there are lots of variants there. It's getting to the point where it just, at some point, it's not going to matter a whole lot, Ryan, because you're going to spin something up and you're going to click start the server, you know what I mean? And the service that you're using will abstract all of that garbage away for you, and you're just not going to have to care about it. That's my opinion.
All right. So the next one we have is out from Stack Exchange. By the way, if you have questions, you're in the chat, and you have questions for myself or Andrew, something you're struggling with, or just feedback on what we're talking about, you can drop those in the chat. We are both monitoring the chat. Looks like Luke had to run. I think it's probably bedtime in Australia. I actually don't know. I think so.
I figure he's got to go eat his crumpets and wrestle a salty, a crocodile, something like that.
Put some shrimp on the Barbie? Is that what you do?
That's what I envision all Australians do, is they start the day with a good croc wrestle,
All right, Andrew. Next question is write project config to cloud storage. This person's on a read-only file system using Google App Engine Flex, and they're able to write the CPU resources to cloud storage using plugin. However, now they have project project.yaml, but I assume they might be on an older version of Craft, but now there's actually a whole directory of project config files. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing about this, because there actually are some answers, is that this question is a scenario that I haven't been in. Have you had to deal with this before?
I have not, but I mean, my assumption would be that you would just turn allow admin changes and set that to false so that no changes are made to the project config stuff in production. And then you're just deploying your project config as code, the same way you would any other code. And I would assume that that would just work.
Yeah, that's what I think too. But I wasn't sure if Craft is actually writing project config files behind the scenes for other reasons. But
it wouldn't be, because if you think about it, like then a Git deployment would fail, right? So if you had it where, and on some deployments, like the default Forge deployment, for instance, it just does a Git pull, right? So if the local stuff that's on your production server, if any part of that changed, the Git pull is going to fail because it's going to say unchanged files and Git's going to puke, and Ryan will come in there and say, come look at my course and I'll show you how to use Git so you can fix this, right? But the point is that I'm pretty sure that would just work, because otherwise that would end up happening. You'd end up in that situation. So none of that stuff should get written out on production.
Yep. So that's what I thought. And then I read what some of the answers were, and I realized that there's some other features in Craft that I didn't know about. One is the Craft ephemeral. Let's see. Let me find that real quick. Craft ephemeral. Let me just open that up.
I think I had to use that in a Heroku setup
So
at one point. I have vague memories of that.
Yeah, set to true, and it will skip the file system permission checks. So it's probably checking to see if it can write to certain directories that are not available in the environment. So that might have to be set anyway. Just to
maybe.
So anyway, but I didn't know about that one, so that's why I wanted to highlight this. So Craft ephemeral, and then also the other answer. This is from Ritternight. He's pretty regular answer on Stack Exchange. Is the manual YAML file generation, and you can actually opt out of having those saved altogether. This is where I thought that if we turned off admin changes or disabled them in an environment like production, then it shouldn't be generating the YAML files. But that's why I was curious if that actually wasn't the case. So there's this where you can actually write YAML automatically you can turn that off. And I assume then the only way to generate those is if you ask it to generate them.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I would be surprised if you needed to do that for that reason, because again, everything that is in project config are the schema things like fields and that type of thing that you can change. If you have allow admin changes off, you can't change any of that in production. So you're never going to be generating any of that stuff.
And also you have the utilities. Would you even get the utilities screens?
You do get utilities. Yeah.
Okay.
You do. And I know that because someone requested that there was some information in my Craft Image Optimize plugin, and it only displayed that on the settings screen. And they're like, well, we have allow admin changes set to false, so we don't even see that settings screen. Can you make a utility that will then display that? And I said, yeah, sure. That makes sense. It was actually my brother-in-law that suggested I do that. So I don't know. I mean, I know that there may be some. I can't imagine there's anything in production that can be changed that would then necessitate writing out those files to begin with, Yeah. So I don't.
That was my
there may be
thought.
something. Yeah. There may be something I'm missing, but that would be my instinct too.
All right. Let's move on. I have one more project config question. And this is one that where a while back, I don't remember what version, I think someone might have mentioned it here.
Oh, hold on. With all this project config stuff, can we just get Andrews on here? Get Andrews on here and make him answerable to all of this stuff.
Nope, that's our job. Our job is to answer the questions. Okay.
Yeah.
So this person is calling out these relatively new comments that are alongside the UIDs of the different settings. This could be a section or a site. Anyway, it helps us easily identify what that is just by glancing. And I remember when they added this, it's kind of nice, but you did suddenly get like an update to all of your project config files with all of these comments in there. So this person is saying that they're seeing inconsistent comments in the project configs. And the question was, how do I get rid of the comments? But what I think is coming out of this, and the reason I wanted to include this question, is that what they were seeing was like they have multiple developers. Some developers were seeing the comments. Some people were not seeing the comments. And to me, when you see something like that, the goal isn't then to try to get rid of the comments. The goal is to actually identify like, why is everybody seeing different things? Because everybody should be seeing the same exact thing if your workflow is set up correctly. So my answer to this would be, you don't want to prevent the comments. What you want to do is probably hit the reset button on anyone that's working on the project with their local database, and pull down a new copy of the production database and a new copy of the YAML files, project config files from production as well. And as long as everyone is not in progress on some feature where they've edited those files, and then hit the reset button and get everybody back on the same place so everybody's working from the same starting point. It sounded like maybe the developers, their local configs got out of sync somehow. Maybe somebody had an old copy of the database or something like that. So anytime you start to see weird inconsistencies, or you're starting to get issues with project config file on production where like you're getting mismatched or things out of sync, to me, like, don't try to onesie twosie troubleshoot. First, reset back to production if that's your starting point, and it should be. And then start from there, and then try to address if there's any issues after that. So the right idea of trying to fix it, but just the goal isn't to try to get rid of the comments, because the comments are being generated and they'll continue to bother you no matter what you try to do.
So there's actually a GitHub issue related to this, Ryan. So I just put that into the YouTube chat.
Okay.
I don't know what the answer is here, but it's one of those things where when I see enough people running into it, I start to wonder if there isn't some kind of a bug. It definitely could be a workflow thing where, they're pulling down. I think in Brandon's answer, he was basically saying, I can't reproduce this, but are you pulling down a database and then, it's out of sync with what you're running locally or that type of thing? I've seen enough people ask about this that I wonder if there isn't something more going on here. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you that there's that issue. And then there's another issue that is linked to from that issue that I'll put into the chat as well. That both seem to be very related. The first one is almost exactly what you're talking about, where they're saying that they run the project config and it will build it with comments, and then they'll run it again and the comments will be gone, and it will generate a diff in Git for every single one. I don't get it, because I thought that every field was supposed to have a comment after it denoting the field handle. What could possibly cause that to be removed, other than just the fact that you're running an older version of Craft that doesn't have the change in it that said, hey, write these comments to it? But I know the person that filed that issue, and I've talked to him privately, and I know that they're not running a different version of Craft. Like, they're running the same version of Craft.
Yeah, I know from my own experience that when things are like, when unusual things are happening, because I just don't think there's any mysteries in what we do, right? Like, there's nothing mysterious. When unusual things are happening, it typically comes down to my lack of attention to some detail. And that's why, like, and of course it could be a bug, but usually my first thing is like, have I made a mess here? Like, have I created a mess? Because I ran into the project config, an issue with it on CraftQuest, and I just basically hit the reset button on the whole thing and started over, and it went away. So
there's got to be a bug or stale data or something in there somewhere. And just real quick, Ben Croker is saying that he can still hear the Space Launch audio playing in the background.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I could low-key hear it too when we're doing it. So I was just letting you know
hang on.
That is going on. So,
all right, Ben,
but in any event,
you can hear it. I don't know how
In
to.
any event, Ryan, if something is happening
Yeah.
and nuking everything and starting from scratch fixes it, I'm like, okay, sure, but it
Right.
sounds like it's some kind of a bug or some kind of cached or stale data or something that's
Yeah.
causing it to get in that state to begin with. And when I start to see a number of people having these kinds of reports, then I start to be like, nah, there may be something going on here, you know?
All right.
I
Sorry,
still just
everyone.
heard the audio.
Yeah, I muted that whole channel of audio. Let me know if you still hear. I think when I switch to the desktop, it might start playing.
You're freaking Danny out. Danny's like, I turn around and thought there was someone behind him talking. You're messing with everyone, Ryan. How dare you?
All right, so Andrew, not Andrew, I'm sorry, Brandon chimed in, and he said that it will only get populated as changes are made or on project config rebuild.
Yeah. So in any event, I mean, the issue that I linked to in talking to him, they did a complete rebuild, and they had the comments were there, and then they made a couple of changes to the fields, and the comments disappeared. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know what could be causing that. It's above my pay grade, but it seems like it could be a bug. Maybe. I don't know what else could cause it. I don't know what could cause it, because they made a change to specifically write those comments out to give people a hint of what's going on. I don't know what could cause it to not then write those out.
So if somebody is still struggling with that, I would, you can package up your project config in your database if you can. I mean, I know Craft support will take a look to try to reproduce. Yeah, I don't know. All of my project config problems have always come from me being a bonehead about it. So, but I mean, now, right? Like, I think early on there were some issues with project config, but now it's always just been my problem.
Yeah, Brandon is saying they probably imported a database that lacked project config file names data after the rebuild. I'm pretty sure I covered that with the person in question, and they didn't do it, but I'll follow back and make sure they didn't do it.
Yeah. You got to be, project config requires you to be orderly and organized. Otherwise you run into issues. All right.
It's one of those, and it's the same whether it's my software or someone else's software or whatever. What is the saying? Fool me once, shame on you, or shame on. Yeah, wait. How does it go? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Something like that. I don't know what I forget what it is.
Fool me once, shame
but the point
on
is,
you. Anyway, go ahead.
Say it.
No.
Get it right. Get it right.
No. I'm not going to go down
Help me out
in the history books as also having messed up that phrase. But
okay. Oh, you're not sure. You don't want to go on record messing it up.
I don't know. I'm not I don't use that phrase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in any event, my point is, whenever I see one person saying about something, I'm like, it could be something that they're just doing wrong or something that's misconfigured or whatever. But when you start hearing a whole bunch of people, or more than one, or getting reports that are kind of correlated, then I start to wonder, and like, is this a bug? Again, Brandon says, great George W. Bush quote. I think he's basically just saying that I totally screwed it up, I think is what he's saying.
That's what I was trying to avoid. So, but.
All right. I'm looking this damn thing up since you're refusing to help me out. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out why the SpaceX video keeps launching behind the scenes here.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, if there's one person reporting it, then it's probably something that they screwed up somewhere. But a bunch of people are reporting it. Well, maybe the problem's me. Maybe it's a bug. It's really funny. Right.
I actually don't think that's a good use of that phrase, but
probably not.
I don't think that's true though. I mean, it might not be a bug. It just might be that using project config, it's easy to get things out of sync like that. So
isn't that a bug though?
I mean, it's complexity. I wouldn't call it a bug, but I mean, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, get your stuff in order, then everything will be all right.
Wow, you're very strict. You're. I'm going to see if you know this word. You are a martinet. Do you know that word?
I don't. What is that?
That's a great word. You should look it up.
Martinet. I found a word that I think I had heard it, but I never really knew what it meant. Hang on, let me pull up. I'm using this new tool called Roam Research. Anyway, let me look at my Calamity Howler. Have you ever heard of that before?
No. It sounds like something that should not be on the show, right?
No. A Calamity Howler is one that makes dismal predictions of impending disaster.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know where it came up. Oh, there's this great book called The Glory and the Dream by William Manchester. It's a history book from like basically around the Great Depression all the way up into the 70s, sort of like the great American, time of great American sort of growth and stuff through World War II and all that. Anyway, but I think he described a politician as a calamity howler or having been done calamity howling or something like that.
That reminds me of the time that I was hiking up the side of an extinct volcano with my brother, and there were some monkeys up there, and they started howling at us, and my brother is just like, "Oh, I think those are howler monkeys up there." I'm like, "Yeah, it sure sounds like it." And my brother's like, "Yeah, I think those are the ones that they throw feces at you when they want you out of their territory." I'm just like, "Oh my God, we should get the hell out of here."
So did you find out?
No, we did not get struck. We ran briskly through the monkeys' territory. We're out of there. Anyway.
Wow. Where was that? Where was that?
In Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we should probably continue on. All right. So
that wasn't a tangent at all, Ryan.
No, I mean
we're right on track.
So Brandon said you might be able to improve comment reliability in 3.7 by storing the name UID mappings in the project config itself.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Well, I think the big objection here was just that it was creating so many Git commits for them, right? It's not like having the comments or not matters other than if you're trying to read the project config. The issue was that they were getting constant Git commits based on the changes of these and sometimes having merge conflicts,
Right. I assume because sometimes the comment would go away and then come back.
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
But
exactly.
There's still something mismatched with how they're doing things. Never underestimate people's ability to hose a Git repository. I mean, I'm including myself in that.
All
right, Andrew. Real quick before we move on to our feature presentation for the live stream, I want to talk about this new course I put out last week. So if we've talked about Nitro here, I did a separate live stream with Pixel and Tonic on Nitro. But I want to quickly highlight the course that I came out with last week. This just requires a free CraftQuest account to watch. And I encourage you to go through it if you haven't used Nitro, if you're curious about it, wondering, how difficult is this to set up. Check out this course. It's free. You just need a free account on CraftQuest. Right now it's 13 videos going all the way through from installing to uninstalling and the whole process. It's still in progress. I'm still working on the Windows installation. They do have Windows support. My virtualized setup on my iMac was giving me problems, so I haven't gotten that video recorded yet. But I encourage you to check that out. It's the latest course addition to CraftQuest, which now, if you go to the homepage, you can see that there's now 697 videos, 53 hours of learning, and 54 courses. So a good time to be checking out all the good stuff on the site. All right, Andrew, we wanted to talk about a tag. This was actually your suggestion.
It was.
So this is we're going to take it back.
And I've got a secret.
What's that?
And I've got a secret too. I have another tag that I'm going to share with you after you're done that you may not know either.
Is it the use tag?
Not telling.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about the embed tag. So in the chat, if you've used the embed tag, I'm pointing over here like the chat is, it's on my screen right here. If you've used the embed tag, just a hand wave or something in the chat. But we're going to talk about this because
thumbs up if you've used the use tag.
Thumbs down if you haven't.
Thumbs down if you
you.
haven't used it. Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
You're welcome.
Keep everything organized.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about, so this is actually your idea to talk about the embed tag. I know you have some ideas for how you were going to use this in, is it in your like settings views for plugins? Is that where your ideas were? I can't remember what you had talked about, but.
Oh, in terms of my reasoning for wanting to use the embed tag?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the embed tag, it seems like it's a very powerful tag, but it's also something that most people just aren't using. It's just not a thing. And I think it's in part because it's a little bit amorphous. It's a little bit hard to wrap your head around. And what it does can be a little specialized. I've talked to some people that have used it, but not many, man. Like, I don't know many people that have actually used it for anything. Like, I don't even know the answer to this right now. So what I'm doing is I'm in the Craft code base and I am searching.
Yeah, so Pixeltonic does use it in the control panel twig code for like field settings. You should be able to find some instances of that. But let's just walk through just to kind of lead up to this. So with the extends tag, right? This is the classic, you have a layout template and you extend it. It has all your core wrapper markup and other stuff that you use basically on maybe every single page of a site, or maybe every type of page on a site. So extends is pretty basic. The main feature of extends is that it allows you to have that code reuse, potentially site-wide or at least across multiple templates. And then you have the ability to override with blocks. So you can have like a header block, you have like a main block. And one of the limitations with it though is that when you extend, you can't put anything outside of blocks. So it all kind of falls apart. So the extends tag, we've all used it. So it looks like we have some thumbs up and thumbs down. So that's good. So we'll,
we've also got Alfredo saying that he uses Craft headless. So
oh, right.
He's exempt.
Yeah, you're exempt. So that's basically the idea, right? Is then you override it with whatever you want in your, this is our layout here. And then you override it here with whatever you want. So the other way of sharing code and potentially, content, just, document snippets, is then we also have here we have an include, right? So the cool part about includes is that it's really about it's entirely focused on code reuse. We don't get the overriding capability via blocks. It's not something that's there. Now we can use the with keyword and then pass in data, like this, and then have access to that in the included template. But we can't selectively override like portions of the template. We can't build like a sub layout, or I think in the documentation they called it like a skeleton layout or a skeleton module or something like that. Like you can't do that with includes. You're basically just including everything, and you can pass data in. Of course, we know that in Craft and Twig, when you include, you get the context of the template that's including it. So like if this was like an entry template, I would get everything that's available via entry.
And I looked at that under the hood. It's literally just a variable called context that is then passed down, and it's just an array of values is what it's passing down. So then when you do with, instead of passing down the parent context, it just passes down an array of the with stuff. But the reason I think most people use the extend and the include model, Ryan, is I think it's easy to think about the way it works, right? So you can think about extending something is you like, oh, okay, I've got my scaffolding here and I extend that here. Like, okay, that's pretty easy. That's one-to-one. when I include something, I'm literally taking that file and I'm copying it into the new document, where I put the include. I get it. That's pretty easy to understand. Tell us about embed. How does that work?
So embed is slightly different. It's a combination of include and extends, basically. In the chat, Brandon said it's similar to slots in Vue, so I could definitely see that. My approach to it is a little bit simpler, but so in this fiddle here, so I have my main file and then the layout, and then the promo box I basically converted into a reusable component with blocks that can override parts of it. And the interesting thing here is that you can do this any way that makes the most sense for your template, for your content, for how people are going to be managing your site. Like you may want them to override actual markup in the template. You may want them to override only, certain parts of it. So let me just scroll up here. So here I'm embedding right here the promo box template, and you can see the difference here between this and an include, of course, is that it's a tag pair because we are dropping in the blocks. And then for anything I want to override inside of that embedded template, I'm just like I would with extends, I'm just defining the block and then passing in what I would want to override with. In this case here, with the title, I don't have a default, but I could just have a default title, and then this would override it completely right here. So we passed in free MP3s, and then we can also override, right now we have the default, so I could override the block. What is this one called? Copy. And then, it's just the same syntax you're all used to. And then run that. Same thing. So we're just kind of overriding. So these are really simple examples, but what you can do is you can build these subcomponents in Twig that can then be reused and customized. So let's say you had something like this. One second. Let me go to here. So on the CraftQuest homepage, I have like these boxes here, right? You can see they're the same. Even down here, these are the same. It's just that there's 3 of them. And they have a different treatment for the call to action button. These are basically the same thing. Previously, and these aren't database driven, right? These are just basically hard-coded components in the template. And before, I had multiple versions of these, and then I just consolidated it down. I built one component, and then using an embed, I was just able to embed this and then add in the customizations, which would be the icon, the content. This would be even HTML, and then I was able to manipulate the HTML for this to give it a different treatment. And
so
in my case,
initially you did the copy pasta thing, where you're just like, oh, I want 2 of these things, so I'm going to copy and paste it. And then you followed the copy pasta rule, where you're like, oh, if I copy and paste something more than 2 times, probably I should fix it and make it a component or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I just made a card component, and then in there, I basically have like the icon, the title, the description, and the call to action. Now you could argue that I could have used an include and just passed in the data using the with keyword. But what I wanted though, like, I mean, you could totally do that, but you could also, to me, it gets kind of crazy for what you have to define in each one. I think blocks in this case are just simpler to use, because then I could block override the entire anchor tag, like all the way through everything, including the classes. Because in this case, I'm using Tailwind, and I'm using a secondary class for a secondary, where there's a little bit of Tailwind. It's a mix of old and new.
Well, the key part for me, Ryan, that make me reach for embed over some of these other things is that you can have markup in the template that you're embedding.
Yeah.
That can be wrapped around. You can do patterns that you just can't do otherwise. Because I remember when I was first learning about the embed tag a while ago, I read the docs and it said the embed tag combines the behavior of include and extends. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
And then I thought for a minute and I'm just like, but what does that mean? And I was like, okay, then I read it again. I'm like, the embed tag combines the behavior of include and extends. And I'm still like, all right. Like I know what one does, I know what the other does, but what do you mean? And it actually took me a while. I don't know. Sometimes we all have these mental blocks, right? But it took me a while to figure out what it really meant. And to me, the analogy that made sense is you're actually embedding a layout template is kind of what you're doing. So in the middle of a document somewhere, we're used to like having a layout template where it is sort of from on the hierarchy of things, it is on the top level and other things kind of extend from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you do an embed, you're kind of embedding a layout template in the middle of another document somewhere. And then you get all the benefits of that layout template in terms of having blocks that can be overridden, in terms of having HTML that can be wrapped around various blocks and that kind of stuff. And that's what made it click for me when I was just like, okay. With embed, we're embedding a layout template in our other templates. That's what made it click for me, for what it's worth.
Yep. And so here's an example of, I'm not sure if you found this too, but field settings in the Craft source in templates, where embedding includes forms field. They're using with just to pass in some simple data there, like the label, and then overriding like the heading block. And then of course, just like with layout, right? You can include the parent just like you can with with extends. And then here they're actually including something as part of the block override. And then they have a block called input, and then they can override that. So they're able to use, and if you go to this thing, what is this embed? Include forms field. So it's this one. And so this is the template that is being embedded right here. Let me just find the blocks here, right here, block heading. And then, I'm not super familiar with this code, but I had found, here's a block input. And so then they're overriding all these. So they're able to build up these little skeleton components that then they can then customize and reuse over and over again.
Yeah, so if you feel bad that you haven't used the embed tag, I did a search in the Craft code base, and they're literally using it a dozen times, maybe. It's something around that. So, and I think the use of it is relatively new, I think. And Brandon will probably tell me, nope, that was in there since 0.095 or something like that. But as far as I know, it's relative. And here's the thing, right? Once you wrap your head around what embed does, there are certain patterns in your templates that you can actually simplify and make a lot nicer, but you kind of have to wrap your head around what it's doing. The reason why I started using it is I had this case where in one of my plugins, I was displaying a number of settings, right? Mm-hmm. But I wanted to put a wrapper around each one of those settings that let you kind of toggle it on and off. In other words, some Chrome that was around each setting. Well, there's no great way to do that if you're just using extends and include, right? Because the thing that is repeating is the Chrome that's around it, Embed lets you do that. You can put the Chrome that's around the thing in the template that you embed, and then in the block can be whatever the field data should be. You know what I mean? And it's the only pattern that let me do what I wanted to do there. And then when I started to learn how it worked, I'm like, oh, you know what? There are a lot of things that I could make a lot cleaner and simpler if I started using this tag. And that's why I thought it would be a good thing to talk about, because I do think, I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm a little slow, but it took me a while to figure out what exactly this tag was doing and why I might use it,
Yeah. And it didn't, like these changes I made on the homepage, like when I was preparing for this yesterday, like that's when I was like, oh, bonehead. Like I could have been, having, and so by the way, one of the things I did is it has these, I'm using the border radius to round the corners. So I have one change in one file that then where I'm now radiusing the corners on all of these components. And that's kind of, once you start doing that, you start building out, this isn't nothing new, right? The whole, we're building components. But that's now I was like, oh, okay. Like now I can start to make more scalable changes, UI changes more easily. So another place I use this as well is in a lesson. Is just, and it's also in a course. There's this list of like links and materials here. So I had a chunk of markup that I used in courses, a different one for courses, for lessons, for live streams. And so that was another opportunity where I could combine that. And I was able to do that with a new component I created called materials list. And it just has the wrapper markup that every one of those material boxes uses. I created some blocks to override the name, although the default name for that component is good enough in all scenarios. And then same as for the description, I just said, here are links and materials mentioned. That could be good for courses, live streams, or lessons, but then I was able to customize that as I needed to. And then for the rows, the actual rows of data that comes out of the database, it's a table field. Those, it's just an empty block that I can then override. And then I actually have an included template where I embed that materials list, and then I override where I need to, and I override rows, and then I just say, well, for entry in live stream, I just output the rows. And so now I can manage the look and feel of that list, including, how it looks in different viewports and things like that from one file rather than having to touch at least 3. So that's one of the enhancements. So Embed really helped out there. Really basic stuff, but honestly, like I haven't used embeds a ton. So.
And in another analogy you can use is you can think of it almost like an iframe in a way, right? So you can think of your web browser is the HTML document, and an iframe allows you to embed something completely different. It's kind of like that in a way, but really it's a way of embedding a layout template inside of your existing templates. And it can lead to some really, really nice patterns if you end up leveraging it. I
think so. And I think if you start to find yourself using the with keyword and you're having to do all sorts of gymnastics to get, I want to reuse this component, then you might be better off using an embed than the include. And you can always use an include in the embed. It's just in the embedded template. But that's maybe one way to go. Bless you.
Did you hear it? Because I hit my cough button.
No, no, you're good. I just saw you looks like you're about to fall over. So I'm glad you're okay.
There are multiple reasons for that. But yeah.
Anyway, so that's embeds. So I hope that was helpful. It was helpful for me to kind of dig in and look at it. I really think if you just say it's the combination of extends and include, you get the block overrides, then that's enough to start playing with it. So check that out. And that's been around for a while. You can look at there's a pretty good write-up in the Twig docs about it. And I actually read a few articles from people in the Symfony world talking about embeds as well.
For whatever reason, man, I had a block on this thing. It took me actually using it before I was just like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. I don't know. You can create components and then you can just use them and customize them. So I think it's kind of nice. All right. So real quick, so that was an excellent job, Ryan. Thank you for educating us on that.
Sure.
Real quick, can I give you my tag that you may or may not know? You're probably going to know it, and I'm probably going to be upset. But
okay,
so
go.
Let's say that you have a layout where you have to lay out. It's like a image gallery, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got a number of things, and it just repeats all over the place. But you want to apply 3 different classes. Right. So first one gets class 1, second one gets class 2, third one gets class 3, and then the pattern repeats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How would you do that?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember the name of the tag now.
But you know it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So this came from a discussion that we had in Discord. And actually, this was a really good lesson for me because like someone was asking a question and I answered it real quick. I didn't really fully understand the problem and understand what was being asked. So the answer I gave probably wasn't that helpful. It wasn't bad, but it didn't really solve the problem in any meaningful way.
Right.
And then I got more information. I said, oh, that's what you're trying to do. Okay, here's a way you can do it. So what they were trying to do was exactly that. They were trying to repeat over, a number of things that were cycling through. And there are lots of ways you can do that, right? So you can do stuff like you can use the modulus operator to get the remainder of the loop variable as you're cycling through.
Oh, but it wasn't a set of class names or anything like that they wanted to iterate over. Or was it?
It was a set of class names.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is that they're iterating over. The point is they want it to iterate and repeat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that you can take you could take the loop variable and you could divide it by whatever number of things you have, and using a combination of that plus the modulus operator. Like there are ways you can figure out where you should be based on where you are in the loop, right? So there are math ways you can do that. It's not a complicated problem, but it I don't know, it ends up looking a little bit ugly,
Yeah. I'm looking
and
at,
I just
so
put
I'm
a
looking
link.
at twig tags. I'm trying to figure out which one you're using because now I don't actually know. But go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So I put a link in chat to the Discord channel where the discussion takes place and where I kind of gave my answer to how I would do it then. And the answer is using this thing called the cycle tag, which is a thing in Twig that has been there for forever. Yeah.
It's not even documented, is it?
It's documented. How dare you say it's not documented?
Oh, it's a function. It's not a tag. That's why. Sorry.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
Can you be a little clearer next time?
I'll be more clear. I meant the function, Ryan. It's a function. Okay.
Yes.
And what it does is you give it an array, and then you give it an index, and you tell it cycle, and it will just it does all the math for you, and it just cycles through it, repeating over and over and over again. And the main thing that I like about using this tag is it's really clear what it does. It abstracts away the math problem that you don't have to worry about. But in just reading the code, in just reading the code, you're like, I know what this does. You know what I mean? And I really like it from that perspective. And it made the resulting code, and actually you can share the Discord link that I put in there too, that has the solution. It made the code that they were coming from just so much cleaner to work with, just a little bit nicer. So that's my tag you may or may not have heard of or used before.
I don't know if I've actually used it. I don't think I have.
I have used it for cycling patterns, like on-off patterns on stuff that are more complicated than just on or off. If you have something that needs to repeat on a more than just even odd basis, it's a nice way to do it in combination with a lookup table. Because basically an array can be used as a lookup table, and then as you're cycling through stuff in a loop, you just use the cycle tag, and it will do the math and pull out the right thing for you to apply.
Sweet.
That's all I got. I mean, you got the embed tag.
No, that's
all
a good
I got.
tip.
Cycle tag.
The embed tag was your idea. I mean, it wasn't your idea, but it was your idea to present it. So you're 2 for 2 today. But we got, you've been working on something too that we're going to hopefully talk about next time. What do you think?
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to say it on air now, just so that I can be
so you don't
either
get lazy.
So there can be lots of pressure, and then also so that I'm held accountable if I don't do it.
Okay.
But I've been using Vite, which is that front end build tool from Evan Yu, the guy who did Vue.js. I've been using that on and off for a little while, and I finally decided to really take a stab at getting it to work because someone filed a feature request for TwigPack, and they said, "Oh, I want, how can you make Vite work with TwigPack?" And I investigated, and Vite is something that you would use to replace Laravel Mix or replace your Webpack config or your Gulp workflow or that type of thing is what it is.
Right.
And it's an opinionated build system that uses, under the hood, it uses this thing called ESBuild, which is sort of like Babel in a way, but it's written in Go, and it will take care of things like transpiling JavaScript and all that weird stuff under the hood. And Andrea actually mentioned in chat when we were talking about it, she's like, "Oh, you could use that to replace Laravel Mix." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, you know what? That's probably very common that people are just like, I don't know what this thing is, but yeah, you totally could use it to replace that. So then I started diving into, okay, what is this going to take to make kind of a craft interface to it? Because it's really written from the front end JavaScript point of view in terms of how it's going to work. And we'll get into the details of how it works when we talk about it. But the long and short of it is that I've been working on a plugin that makes it super easy to just hook up to a Vite server and just have that work. You get your HMR going. And yes, it'll work inside of Docker or Nitro or Vagrant or whatever you want. And you get your HMR, and then you also get your builds. It does its builds via rollup. So you get all the things, and it's nice and simple and concise. So that's what I've been working on.
We're going to preview that next time in 2 weeks.
If either that or I'm going to leave the country, Ryan. I'm going to be on a plane to Mexico or something if I don't get it done by then, because it's really close, actually.
I always assume you're never in the country, and that's just a green screen behind you.
Wouldn't that be great if I could just like snap my fingers and it would reveal the truth? You know, like some palm trees behind me or something. That'd be awesome. But no, the sad reality is I'm in the same place. But in any event, the plugin is, I would say, I would give it like a 90% done, 95% done, something like that.
Okay.
The last 5 to 10%, you know, can sometimes be a whole lot of the effort because it involves things like the documentation, the examples, and yada, yada, yada. But that's where we are on it. I've already got the GitHub repo up. The develop branch has got a whole bunch of stuff checked in. So cool. I feel pretty confident that we'll be showing that next week.
All right. Well,
or
that
2
sounds
weeks.
Good.
2 weeks.
This is time to introduce the new
Is this Knight Rider?
Music. This is the new closing music, Andrew. We're gonna wrap up.
It sounds like the Knight Rider soundtrack.
Well, you know, I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers. All right, Andrew, thank you for joining me again, and everyone in the chat, thanks for chiming in. Thanks for your questions. You can always ask a question in between episodes. CraftQuest.io. I have a new URL /NS. And if you think I'm clever for coming up with that, I appreciate that. Craft questions.
Oh God.
You
got to get Brandon on here to talk about this whole CraftQuest name, by the way.
Go.
Here's
no,
Tyler.
No, we're not doing that now, Andrew. I already got the music
threatened
playing.
Tyler. Hold on, I threatened Tyler to get him kicked off the show, Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Because he kept on. I think he was doing it by mistake, but it might have been by accident. It might have been on purpose. He kept on saying CraftQuest.
That he'd probably do that on purpose.
I told him he'd get kicked off the show.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. All right.
All
anyway,
right.
Sorry.
Everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next live stream. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andrew.